Hello again. Hello to the live that we do here every Sunday with Autistic Radio. Shortly we'll be joining Harry, who hosts the show based on his Facebook posts for the autisticradio.com website on Facebook. I'm going to talk, as I usually do, for a few minutes about what we're doing here at Autistic Radio, and also for the charity that we set up ourselves, the Autistic People Autistic Association. It's a mixed bag. Yes, we've got plenty of content out there. We've just published another one in the Autie Unmasked series, which is a very popular series. So thank you for those who are following Lucy and Raymond in that. And the new series that Nicola has put together, so far with myself being most of the subject, but she's going to move that on to other things later. Autistic Travelling has also picked up some new listeners, and I know the regulars are finding that interesting as well. So thank you for the comments that you've been sending in. In addition, with the serious stuff and the behaviourism and the ABA, I'm waiting for a few permissions until the edits that I've done go out there. I think people who are completely anti-ABA will be happy to hear some of the things that are said in those broadcasts. I don't see it as my role to shout at the ABA community or put them down, but I do give them the space for them to start to realise some of the things that have been going wrong, and some of them do realise that. I have one that I'm particularly proud of, Aoife McTiernan, a doctor, lecturer from Galway in Ireland. In that episode, you're going to hear some very clear truths that even the most vocal of autistic advocates would agree with. And we also have something from the beardist behaviourist out there. He's an autistic man, very highly qualified, with real reservations about how ABA and behaviourism have been used, but he also, with all of his qualifications, see that there is a slight place for some of the theories of behaviourism in supporting and helping. So it's a very balanced situation there with him. And the bad news. For 3 years, we have been working at Autistic Radio. In fact, some of our members go back even further, with a couple of professionals, one of whom is a researcher and has come out as neurodivergent themselves. For the last 3 years, I've been both very disappointed in how developments have gone. We've felt as though there hasn't been reciprocation, and I personally would put the opinion that the autistic researcher themselves is pretty much carrying on the way that non-autistic researchers carry on. They have not yet managed to overcome and change the way that they're dealing with things. However, I know that a lot of you are very interested in the Autism and Dementia project. So we'll be putting out a podcast after a recording that we made with both the researcher and her supervisor, and you'll be able to make up your own decision, and you'll have the opportunity to contact the research department at Strathclyde and make yourself available for a steering group. I personally have had enough. I'm walking away. I feel as though there isn't a trust and there isn't a value for me personally or for the Autistic Radio Project. But that doesn't mean you won't. However, in the broadcast, I think some of you will think it's not for you. Shouldn't really finish things on a bad note, but hopefully, as we move now to Harry's broadcast, there'll be things that liven things up and enlighten us and give us something to be cheery about. Are you ready to take the mic away from me, Harry?
Yes, I'm hoping so. I'm just hoping... How's my sound? Is my sound okay?
Sounds great to me, mate.
Okay, right. I just had technical issues there, so I was a bit panicky, being live, all that. But yeah, I'm happy to take it on. Thanks very much, Jules. Thanks for the update. This is Harry's Facebook for the 9th of February 2025. And what we're going to move on to the first post is from Autism Initiatives. And Autism Initiatives are a non-profit organisation. They're a registered charity providing specialist autism services in the UK, Ireland and Isle of Man since 1972. We work positively alongside autistic people, their families and carers, providing specialist services tailored to each individual. And what they've shared is an upcoming workshop, a virtual workshop, and it's about the CARE Act. And who's running it is a social justice lawyer called Alec Rook, who will host the workshop for parents, carers and anyone who works alongside autistic people. It will help you understand the CARE Act and what you should expect local authorities to do. The free workshop will take place virtually on Zoom on Monday the 24th of February 2025 from 10 AM to 12 noon UK time. And it says to leave a comment or send a message if you're interested in attending, as there will be a limited numbers of spaces available. Just to add to the information already shared, it's the Autism Alliance that's arranged this with the Autism Initiatives. And what they've done is arranged the social justice lawyer Alec Rook to run the workshop for parents and carers and staff who support them. And it explains that Alex has won a judicial review cases at every level within the British court system and undertakes welfare work in the Court of Protection, acting for official solicitor as well for families and advocates. He will talk through the relevant duties in the CARE Act and a worked example of a good quality care assessment. Following this, there'll be times for questions and discussion. Care needs assessments are required to access adult social care services and support. These assessments are important for autistic adults and their families, but it can be very difficult to secure because of the pressure on local authorities' budgets and staffing. The CARE Act 2014 places duties on local authorities to assess needs for care and support for all adults who may have needs. It is vital to be clear what the law says, what you should expect, and what a good quality care assessment looks like. This workshop will cover similar content to the previous workshop on this topic, which was run, by Alex as well. However, since then there's been evidence of further pressure on local authority funding for care and support, with no immediate signs of this changing. So the topic is more relevant than ever. Quite hard hitting, but what's other people's thoughts on this topic?
This is the kind of crap we really don't need. This is one of these situations where the funding isn't there. So what we do, instead of finding sensible ways around it to make things cheaper and easier, a group of organisations that are not autistically led make more trouble and make more expense and try to enforce laws that we cannot afford as a society. This does not work for autistic people. What this does is it puts more money in the hands of the very people who are using autistic people for their careers, especially lawyers.
I think there's also, is this a free training that this guy's doing? I'm imagining that the families who feel forced to use the legal system to be able to get support for their loved ones, when the council say, no, there's no support available, or you don't qualify, and so they're having to go through the court to appeal this. This guy, this free offering is going to give them some tools to navigate that. So this is one of the issues where we are the people. There's there's people's lives who are on the line depending on where these political lines are drawn, and they're desperate for this information at the moment. Where else do they turn? I know that our local carers of West Lothian, one of the things that they're doing is trying to help families to navigate really difficult systems that the state, that gatekeep support from the state. And in a way, it's sad that's the route that's going, because there's just not enough resources on the ground, or it seems to be, to be able to arrange our own systems.
Yeah, I've got to say, when I did see this post up, I thought this needs to be shared because it is quite alarming. And I share what's been said by Jules and Nicola already. It's just reading through it and what it's saying, what the workshop is for. It's for families and carers and staff members, and no mention of autistic people, even as a token, which you generally see in some of these things. It's just there's no inclusion at all. And I totally understand what's being said. It's there's financial pressures, there's limitation on costs, there's limitations on money available. And the frustrating thing is people are going to try and grab at their limited money that's there, to the detriment of autistic people out there. It may be worthwhile in a way, but in a way these things, I've been, not this particular topic, but I've been to these events where they're talking shops. So all these experts get together and talk about something, either on Zoom or in a hall somewhere. And it's just all talk and all ideas maybe, but it never seems to be that progressive. It just seems to be sort of stale. The same old faces even being there, the same old idea, the same old fashioned sort of methods. It's not progressive enough, certainly, for the way that we do need to move forward, especially with the financial constraints that there is currently in the UK.
When I had my Care Act assessment, I quoted from the government's own guidance of what they were doing wrong, and it made absolutely no difference. this would only be available to go forward with if you had the money to pay for legal help. I didn't have that.
I fully understand what Nicola's saying. She has a couple of boys at home, and she wants their rights. She wants their situation to be best. And so many parents are going to feel the same. My rather angry attitude is that I don't believe it works for the benefit of the parents or of the kids. I think what we're seeing here is a way of organisations fighting for their budgets. They'll fight for their budgets, but they'll actually reduce the amount of effect on the ground because they're fighting for their budgets. They're the most inefficient way of getting help and services and supports to kids. These are the people that have been increasing the price to such an extent that the government is turning around and saying no. These are the people that made the problem in the first place. And they're making it look as though they're on our side, and they're not.
Yeah, just to be clear, I wasn't referring to myself as somebody who'd sought care. I haven't, but I'm part of like local activist kind of peer support groups. So I know people who have needed to apply for support. Yeah, just to clear, just to say, and yeah, I think that it's interesting thinking about. I wonder if communities can start to pull together and have more sort of grassroots access to support, rather than kind of through, as you say, agencies that have overcharged and made businesses out of this.
I think what you say there is absolutely spot on. The grassroots and the activists are the people that create services that are both appropriate and a lot cheaper. And if we keep supporting these organisations, then we won't get any money down to the grassroots where it actually does the good. It feels like a con to me. And I know people are in difficult circumstances and they need support.
Go on, Robbie.
It seemed like a way of getting business for me. Because where do they go after that? I couldn't get help from my local council after my care. They were quite happy to spend money left to me on services they thought I should have.
And it's autism initiatives, and we know what autism initiatives are. We saw what they did with the late diagnosis program. They took the money and they didn't really produce a very good service. They did it more expensively, and they have failing services called one-stop shops that are highly criticised by autistic people themselves, they're incredibly expensive. So the fact that the post comes from Autism Initiatives makes me suspicious from the beginning.
The next post is from that autistic lady, who's a digital curator, a content creator of autistic, ADHD and dyspraxia things, as described, as a website called the neurodivergencecollective.co.uk. And this is what she shared with us. Buckle up, I haven't done one of these for a while, so it's time for another awkward introduction. My name is Wena. I like dogs and my favourite colour is green. No blue. No, actually, green. I live in the UK with my neurodivergent family. My husband and my two beautiful babies, who are 17 and 12. I also have 3 rescue dogs, Hank, Hetty and Otto. I discovered I was autistic at 30, and it changed my life. I then had neurodivergent burnout at 32, and discovered I was ADHD combined type. That saved my life. I also have dyspraxia, OCD and PMDD, and use my social media platforms to share my personal experience of being a late discovered neurodivergent person. My content is a combination of my raw moments and an attempt to be funny. There's no in between really. I cry at happy things, have no concept of time, and I'm ridiculously ambitious that I often exhaust myself. When I was younger, I wanted to be a dancer, ice skater, physiotherapist, or pizza delivery driver. I actually took a slightly different career path. I'm a neurodivergent consultant and run my own business providing support for neurodivergent people. I am also a qualified HR professional and a psychology student. I laugh at my own jokes and read medical literature for fun. Dogs are my special interest. Dog photos are always welcome in the comments. I used to hate sharing anything about myself, but it's so important to share different neurodivergent experiences. I felt so lost when I discovered I was neurodivergent, but felt so much comfort reading about other people's experiences. I decided one day to write a post about my own autistic experience. I very nearly didn't post it, but I am so glad that I did. Thank you to each and every one of you who are here on this bumpy ride with me. Love. What's your thoughts on this?
I find that really relatable, and what they said about like in the past not liking to speak up and not liking to use your voice, and I feel like over the years I've really hidden away, and so doing something like this is a really big deal for me, and it took me quite a lot to get to the point that I'm able to do this. And one of the things was like I did a mental health peer support course online at the University Highlands and Islands, and I was drawn to it because I knew about the recovery ideas around mental health already, but because it was a course that was the only qualification needed was lived experience of like mental health recovery. And so I got along, and I really found out there that the things that helped me get up and keep going, and the things that helped me recover, the fact that I have recovery, and like still have my ups and downs and things, meant that I had something of value to share with other people. So I started getting used to being able to speak a bit more, and that's kind of how I find myself here. So I do agree. Like, I think it's really, it's a really healthy thing to connect and be seen, heard.
I'd really support what Nicola says there, and there's something about the variety of people as well. The person is advocating, and they're doing it in their own way. They're being funny, and they're doing doing it their way. So whether it's to your taste or not, it doesn't matter. It's a lovely, brave thing to be out there advocating and as Nicola says, being visible.
I always like seeing people sharing their experiences, and while they're doing it, they also demonstrate how difficult it was to make that first step of doing so, because I can relate to that. Even just talking about my own experiences, through the radio, through the other things that I've done in the past. Sometimes I've been involved in things like books and research, and it's, even though it's worthwhile doing, it's a difficult thing to do, is to talk about yourself, especially if you've been through quite a hard journey. But when you get to the end of actually talking and sharing, especially if you're doing it with new people, it feels worthwhile. Obviously it depends on the response, but mostly in my experience, it's been positive feedback, because it's good to share that everyone's different. And what I have noticed about a lot of these kind of personal sort of posts is there's quite a bit of humour there, sarcastic humour, black humour, and that goes a long way. I certainly use it myself. It goes a long way to help move forward and share those quite intense, kind of emotional details that sometimes you share for the benefit of helping others and networking with others. So I'm always keen on seeing and reading and sharing all these different posts that come on Facebook. The next post is from Mohammed Autism Journey. Digital creator, welcome to my world of autism and the non-verbal secret world. I'm talented in sports and pre-modelling. And what's been shared is a quote regarding report cards from school from saying, I'll read it out. Show me a report card that says, my child tried, my child made a friend, my child spoke in class, my child tied his shoes, my child ate lunch, my child advocated for himself, my child isn't a bully, my child tried in a neurotypical world, my child is kind. Straight to the point, and I think it hits many people differently. What's your thoughts on that quote that's been shared?
Strangely enough, I still have my report cards from primary school and secondary school. In them, as well as assessing you in little tick boxes for comprehension and computation and all those big words, there was a little report which you would refer to, in a sense, your personality and your behaviour, like who you were, what you enjoyed doing, what you didn't enjoy doing. That was a long time ago. I don't know quite what it's like now.
Yeah, I had my old report cards as well before the fire, and they had these kind of lovely little messages in them. They were generally positive about little bits and bobs about, I thought report cards still did this.
They do, in my experience. I notice a little bit with the high school, because my eldest's in and seeing lots of different teachers throughout the day. You can tell the ones that make a connection with the kids where they do know them, and you can tell the ones who are just focused on like the kind of performance of like the subject. But generally, yeah, like, and especially in primary, there's a lot of that.
Yeah, could do well if he applied himself and stopped staring out the window at dogs.
Oh, I got loads of them. But they were kind,
Easily distracted and distracts others. Anyone else?
The one I liked was excellent project work.
I've certainly, got some, compliments here and there about certain work. But the biggest criticism was lack of handing homework in time and basically daydreaming. And this is high school. It's coming back to me because my dad actually gave me a report card. It was in the loft or something. It wasn't that long ago, and I actually put it as part of the post that I do, the article that I do. And it's actually based on that report card, and it was all, there was some good in it and there was some kind of not bad, but people basically saying that I need to apply myself better and not daydream or do homework better, do things on time, and that just kind of relates back to why I hated high school. It's just like pressure, pressure, pressure. You must, you must, you must. And it's good to be reminded of that and not thinking I'm paranoid in the memories that I have. But it's interesting. I mean, it was some good and some not so good. There was nothing total disaster. I think there's maybe one teacher that didn't really take to me. But from what I remember, that kind of teacher didn't seem to get on with anybody, so I didn't take it personal.
It makes me feel uneasy about, this daydreaming thing that you mentioned. I got that a lot as well. And looking back now from like a parent's eye view, I would be really asking, were they daydreaming or are they dissociated? How stressed are these kids?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, a lot of times in school, from what I remember, I wasn't daydreaming just for the sake of daydreaming. I was actually thinking ahead about dreading the way home on the school bus, or basically just wanting to get the hell out of there because I didn't feel comfortable, I wasn't feeling great, I was under pressure. It wasn't this like fantasy thing, it's basically feeling intense and feeling not safe and just not feeling comfortable at all.
I've never seen any report in school, but I could gather they're like my mental health record of being told I'm not engaging with them.
Is it possibly because you weren't engaging with them, Robbie?
For some reason, they don't have to engage with me.
Okay, I get the point.
From what I remember in school, there's a sort of hierarchy because of the way the system was at the time anyway. There's people that teachers would support more because they feel that the pupils are making more of an effort and they're just getting on with it. There's certain ones, maybe, the likes of me, who feel to be nudged every now and again, but there were so many others that was just like cast away, or they're a nuisance, and a lot of people actually, I can recall, didn't get by first year. Now I've no idea whether they're autistic or not, but the point is sometimes if you don't toe the line or you don't seem to conform, you're sort of kind of cast aside anyway, which is no good in an environment that's supposed to be educating you.
School to me seemed to be more about compliance and learning.
Yeah, I think, Robbie, there's an awful lot of autistic people that say exactly the same thing. We have a podcast with an educationalist coming up. Tim is her second name. And we go into that in quite detail. So, yeah, I think that's something to listen to coming up.
The next post is from Paul Isaac's Consultancy Limited, with Life and Learn in the United Kingdom. And Paul Isaac's Consultancy Limited is a motivational speaker, trainer and consultant based in the UK. And what I shared is in 2022 I was invited to write a guest blog about the autism community and my journey to getting a diagnosis. And there's a link that I'll go into. Called Finding Balance in Autism. And it says, "Hello, my name is Paul Isaacs. I have been an autism speaker, trainer, consultant and author. I have been in the autism world for around 12 years. I was diagnosed with autism and obsessive compulsive disorder in 2010 at the age of 24 and visual perceptual disorders and learning difficulties in 2012. Prior to my diagnosis, I went to an educational psychiatrist in 1993 and child and adolescent mental health services in 1996 for depression. The specialist heavily implied that I had potential learning difficulties, speech problems, and dangerously stated at the end of my report that my parents' mental states were having an impact on me. It talks about being a toddler. I'll just read through. I went through adult mental health services in my early 20s in 2007, where I received my diagnosis of borderline and schizotypical personality disorders, auditory hallucinations and psychosis. Going back further to 1986 when I was born, it was very traumatic for both mother and I. She had placental abruption which caused brain injury and I was born premature. In the first 6 months of my life, I appeared deaf and blind, had speech and language delays as well as motor coordination delays. My mother noted differences which caused concerns from 18 months onwards. Her observations of me as a baby were that I was sleepy, tired and quiet, and in many ways I seemed happy and content. However, she also observes incidents of head banging, in which I was smiling, and I was also very hyperactive as a toddler. The importance of this introduction is to set the foundation and to give more context. For had I been diagnosed as a child, it would have been now dated terms classic, caners or severe autism. My understanding of this, at least from my information processing trajectory, was that I had high challenges such as B meaning deaf, meaning blind, object blind and context blind, leading to me to be tactile associative in my modulation and understanding of world. My blueprints of understanding the external world were through my hands. Through kinesthetic association, my mother was here, the texture, and I sculpted my dad's face. This system helped me bond with them. This also had an impact on my language at preschool. I was around 80% meaning deaf, and I couldn't merge interactive meaning into a framework verbally with picture associations. My expressive language was delayed, and I lived in what the late Donna Williams coined the system of sensing, in which my language was governed by feel, emotive, speak, echolalia and expraxia, in which I would forward and rewind videotapes over and over, hearing the phonics. When functional speech came in later, infancy, at around 7 to 8 years old, exposed anxiety took hold, and my words would tumble internally and externally due to the residual oral expraxia. My attempts at fluid interpretive fluency was like walking through a sticky bog. The attention that this garnered from peers, and even more so teachers, led my nervous system to react compulsively, and bouts of selective mutism were persistent in blocking the sensation of being attacked. When I think of a diagnosis of autism, firstly, I think we must aim for something objective, meaningful, and relevant to the person in question. In other words, we must open up to the diagnosis so it can become more three-dimensional, breaking down the different pieces of their autism into specific manageable pieces. This could involve offering strategies that will aid, assist, and empower the person in the real world, because that's where people reside. I personally do not see autism as an identity. I have many reasons for this, but the here is the most tangible and basic. All people are made of more than one word. Humans are three-dimensional, patchwork quilts in which many interlinked pieces that make up that person with different origin points abound. We have to see the person first. For it, overinvestment is melded into the ego-syntonic framework. Condition is all self, then loses balance. Then what room can be made for others' experiences? Now, I'd like to point out at this point that I'm neither a militant culturalist or curist, as both have been very imbalanced ideologies of what autism is, and neither parties, for very different reasons, see the person. This is why I aim for the middle path, in which you can take both the medical and social model and merge them together to create a holistic and person-centred empowerment model. This is based on Donna Williams' fruit salad model of autism. If we dare to challenge ourselves and respect our experiences, we can share this information with clarity and objectivity, suppressing stereotypes and helping people feel valued and cared for. Paul. It's quite intense, it's very detailed. What's people's thoughts on Paul's blog information?
I stopped listening a long time ago.
I'll say well done, Harry, because that was quite a long read. Sometimes we don't know what we're getting into when we're reading something back, and it can be quite lengthy. But I'm sure I've come across this guy before somewhere in some other space as a reference. And he's obviously evolved quite a detailed and complex language to express himself from those origins he explains. It may be the same guy I heard about, maybe not, maybe somebody with a similar experience. But it was something he was saying about the three-dimensionality there of identities. It's something I can relate to. And I think he's getting that from the contextual aspect, the context that he found himself in as a person with a difficult way of, what was it he called it, meaning something. I'm trying to find the paragraph. But anyway, relating in a tactile way, communicating in a tactile way, because the other modes were not operating correctly. So I think when you've grown up with that kind of other dimension to communication, you're looking for a more broader context of explanation as you get older. So I'll leave it at that. That was what I gleaned from that.
Yeah, I got a fair wee bit from that, and I understood it as somebody explaining perhaps having had to go very consciously through some developmental stages that are unconscious or unconscious or happen at a different time than others. I kind of got the sense that they'd learned, they'd been identified as a young child, as autistic. That's what I got from it, and that they had additional education, so they were able to speak about that experience of sort of carving out people and realizing that, oh right, okay, you're actually here in the real world and I should concentrate on you, like that being a manual process that they'd kind of learned to do, because there was something about the articulation was like kind of how I feel something my head does when I've learned something like non-intuitively or in some sort of different way. I quite enjoyed hearing you read it.
Just to say, it's not the same guy I thought it was. The guy I thought was mute until he was like 15 or 16. And then found and developed a means of learning to speak. And then became very well educated at further education. And he himself was a consultant in his mid to late 20s. So, different guy though.
Yeah, I've shared a few things from Paul, and it's the same sort of kind of, it's this perspective. It's like putting something across differently to what we've discussed already. Some people will be intrigued by it, some people just go, there's a lot of words there, a lot of description, and while I was reading it, while understanding it and taking it on board, it was a lot to sort of take in. It's just so much, but that's life, that's people's experiences, and that's a description of one's experience, and just shows you what life's all about. It's not just black and white, it's not just simple, and it's one person's perspective as well. I was quite interested that he's not keen on the identity, but he doesn't want to be seen as militant either, so he's saying there's a third middle ground that you could take, But I think there's all different ways you can take perspectives of what autism is and what suits you. I mean, you get some people that look at it as a gift. Some people put it as a major disability that impacts their life in a negative way. And there's people who just say, that's who I am and that's how I live my life. I know that's just three, but there's a lot more than that, depending on the person and how they've experienced life. Basically how they came across, if they either were diagnosed or if it was an identity of autism that came in the first place as well.
Yeah, I'm a wee bit wary of identity too, but I'm warming a wee bit now because we need some common reference points to align with each other.
The next post is from Jordan James, the autistic photographer. Public figure. Hi, I'm autistic, ADHD, dyslexic and generally neurodivergent photographer, parent, husband, advocate, neurodivergent specialist, and author and host of the Neurodivergent Experience podcast. I'm also a motivational speaker, so please email me for inquiries, and the contact details are on the post. And he shared a quote from Greta Thunberg, and it basically says, when haters go after your looks and differences, it means they have nowhere left to go, and then you know you're winning. I have Asperger's, and that means I'm sometimes a bit different from the norm, and given the right circumstances, being different is a superpower. Most people's thoughts on that? And the language is quite strong.
I'm going to ask a question, right? It may be trivial, but an autistic photographer, is that an autistic person who takes photographs, or is it someone who takes autistic photographs? Because there was a time when I took photographs, and now I look back on them and I wonder about that latter option. Were they autistic photographs? But anyway, it's a bit of a sideline from what he's posting about. I'm going to leave that quote aside just now. But I'm curious about this motivational speaker game.
Sometimes, because of the journey I've kind of led, it's like you look at certain words that are being quoted or someone has said. You know, we've already talked about, you know, the superpower thing, and that was part of that quote. And, you know, the now outdated Asperger's kind of label as well. But at the end of the day, I mean, when I look back on it, that's what I was diagnosed with back in 1998. And it just seems that this is an inspirational quote, I think, because of all the criticism that can come towards you. And it's a way of fighting back, in a way. And saying the right things, of self-encouragement to keep battling away at what you do and all the criticism that comes at you, depending what you do. Because I know Greta Thunberg has had a lot of criticism, had a lot of hassle, and I'm aware that Jordan James has also explained that he's had that as well. So that's a link. It's just like the inspirational quotes, they fight back and defend your ground and not be put off, even though there will be tough days. And as we know about social media alone, never mind other medias, it can be quite brutal. See, if people are out to get you, they'll say things. They'll even say it's things that are personal, even though they don't know you, like your looks, or how you speak, or how you dress. And that can be quite intense, especially if you're autistic. But obviously it affects everybody as well. So that's what I'm taking from it. Inspirational, but also educational.
Well,
There's a wee phrase I use sometimes, and it's losing is winning, but yeah, it's just a wee phrase.
Jules?
Greta Thunberg has taken on big oil, big coal, all the lobbies, all the big industrial lobbies, right-wing politicians, all the vested interests of capitalism, to point out that growth and the way we do our economics is not sustainable. And it's not really individuals that are attacking her, it's bots and it's companies and it's everything. And she's pointing out, as a protester, they will go for anything. When they can't deal with the actual facts, they go for the way you look, the way you dress. You know, people in the past have been called lesbians or all kinds of things just to get them in some way criticised in personality politics.
Yep, that is very true. There will be the bots, there will be mechanisms, things put in place to fight back or attack a certain movement or a certain person especially. And I've seen it myself. And a lot of it's directed at women and try to put women down. And it always angers me. I don't like it happening to anybody, but it's the things that are said, the things that they're threatened with. It's absolutely horrific, you know. And it's sometimes it's really silly things that people are moaning about, but it's just that it's just the brutalness of how people can just attack just for the sake of lashing out, and it's totally brainless. But then there's ones that's actually it's kind of structured, it's planned, it's tactical. You know, if someone's opponent or stating facts and it's not liked by the people that's affecting, they will look at methods to try and ridicule or destabilise the people that, you know, basically muddle the information, because when they start throwing other things in, the message can get lost, and it can become a mudslinging match depending who they're doing it to. Because sometimes people do bite back, and people just it does no good. It causes mayhem. But obviously it's tactical and deliberate. But it's good to see inspirational quotes, things to encourage and to inspire, despite all that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, this goes right down to places like the workplace and the inconvenient truth that the autistic person might be pointing out. So the little group and society around them try to undermine them in all kinds of ways about how they act or how they look or whether they're too rude or these kind of things. Society doesn't want to be told that it's doing things badly or wrong. Just the way it is, and we are often on the receiving end because we're the whistleblowers.
The next post is from Swan Autism Scotland, who are an autistic-led charity run by and for autistic women and non-binary people since 2012. And what they've shared is about this information. Basically it says, I don't know how many of you have found a library a sanctuary or escape over the years at school or as an adult. For many of us, reading can be a passionate interest or just collecting books. If you're anything like me, Becky Choate, Swan Scotland, you might have an entire library in your house. Today we have the pleasure of exploring inclusive spaces and intersectionally with CILIP, the Library and Information Association for Winspiration, Feminism for Libraries and Librarian series. Tanya Milligan, one of Swan's fantastic trustees, who also works as a senior librarian in Falkirk Libraries, and Becky Choate, Swan Scotland project lead, will be leading the session looking at what it means to be autistic from a lived experience perspective and the role of intersectionality and how to create safe and inclusive library spaces for both library colleagues and library users. And it's going to call neuro-inclusive environments. You know, knowing what to expect, audit your environment, and continuity and predictability, choice, control and options, sensory aids, tools and spaces, be trauma informed and create safety, and different ways of communication and giving information. What's people's thoughts on this? Have they heard about it? I like to share these things, it's quite educational for a lot of people, information sharing, and talking about safe spaces especially. And the big kind of topic at the moment is about libraries, in terms of a library building and a library service, because we're going through a period where libraries are actually being lost. Somewhere to access, somewhere to go is slowly being lost due to funding, due to unable to people believing that it's not getting used enough because people have access to online libraries, etc., and they don't need to access a different place other than their home. But as we all know, we need somewhere else to go, and definitely somewhere we feel safe to go and be part of. That's a big thing for many people who are autistic. I certainly do feel that way. I've never been a big library person myself, but I do like information, and I do like listening to others that are full of information and can be very educational and inspiring.
My grandparents were librarians, and this is just making me think of my grandpa who he used to show the workmen all the banned books in the National Library, and I remember, like, as a child finding out there was banned books. I just thought that this was very, very intriguing information about the world.
I used to love libraries. I think what's happened is the need for them is kind of gone. The need for them in the sense we used them, say, pre-internet. And even at that time, they were becoming an almost like a community facility. And in a sense, they always were. but they were a place that kind of looked after young children in little groups. So there was a sense of child minding. There was computers beginning to come in, so there was digital access, helping to fill in forms, all those things. Whereas when I first started going to libraries, it really was a book concern and very traditional. But they're lovely spaces, you know, and they were back then. Nowadays, I find them a wee bit, you know, a lot to process. They're high energy. But this post is from Swan, and does it relate specifically to Swan's activities, or is it a general kind of comment being made here?
I think Swan's hosting, and they're taking a very specific way of looking at it as safe spaces for potentially vulnerable people. The library is a sanctuary, so the library is also where, you know, women's groups used to get together, or mother and toddlers groups for books and things. A well-used library, a well-organised library, can be an incredible facility for people who otherwise are disadvantaged. So I would support Swan, and well, I support Swan in their way of looking at the world anyway.
I'd quite like to start a little library in with my peer support group. We've got a wee collection just now, and I've got some more on the way, but I feel like maybe we just need to sort of seed librarians around the place.
Yeah, I used to refer to that as a found library, you know, where you suddenly find yourself in a library. It could be anywhere, but you access it through that kind of relationship of transmitting information to a certain extent, as you say, seeding librarians. But my friends and I used to piggyback on libraries. They were an available existing facility, and we used to go there. This is a story I may have told before, but we used to go there and sit by the big newspaper table and have meetings and drinking chocolate. That was our specific drink from the vending machine.
When I was in primary school, the library was right next door, and my mum wrote me a wee note so that I could go and borrow books from the paranormal section of the adult library. So I was like, instead of having to deal with the school playground, I was like educating myself on the like different legions of angels and demons.
Oh, you got a permission letter for that? Because I was banned from wandering into the adult section, which I occasionally would do because it was very close to the junior children's section of the library. But you're also making me think about school libraries, which is another sanctuary relating back to one of the previous posts about education.
Yeah, it was so because it was so specifically just the occult books. Some my parents and the librarians thought that this was fine. So yeah, I had quite a rich occult knowledge by the time I went to high school, and a knowledge of hypnosis, which didn't make me as popular as I thought it would. And I wasn't meaning in terms of mind control. I just thought I could like share my skills, like as in look at this cool thing I learned. But actually, it just made me like really strange and unrelatable. Kind of like, yeah, like kind of like a really confused, like, yeah, very confusing time.
All that stuff's in the section that begins B, and it's often the first place you hit after leaving the junior section. It's like there's nothing really in A, if I remember, but B is belief. And I was in there looking for books on coin collecting and suddenly saw all the esoteric stuff. So serendipity.
The next post is from the Autistic Biker, who is a blogger. And what they shared is a quote, but they shared a picture as well. Sun and the moon, very nice picture. That that may be their own. Let's see. No, autism, anyway, sorry, I'm gonna forget I'm live here. What they've shared is a nice colourful picture, and basically it's a quote saying, "Hold on tight to the people who love you a little bit more on the days you can't love yourself." You know, quite intense, but it's something that I certainly can resonate with every now and again. That support, whether it's friends or family, to show that someone loves you, likes you when you're feeling doubt yourself, or not hating myself, but being annoyed at myself. I've had those moments, being annoyed of who I am for whatever reason, like something's triggered or something's just an experience that's happened. It's just good to have that sort of comfort blanket. What's other thoughts?
I like the guy's avatar, his wee image for his Facebook name. It says, "We can't all be Karen." It's quite amusing. I'm assuming this is a guy. Bad me. Autistic biker could be anyone.
The next post is from Emergent Divergence, the Neurodivergent Ramblings of David Gray Hammond, who's an author of books, writer of blogs, advocate, mentor, trainer, and professional nuisance, as described. And it's basically an announcement or an update saying, just a couple of days ago, "Just so people are aware, I have reached a point that I've had to switch off my DMs, my messages. For people who want a consultation or my services, you can still reach me at my email and my website. I had to do this because I'm getting hundreds of messages a week, and some of them are quite inappropriate and or triggering." And I can relate to that in many ways, if not through Autistic Radio, but in other things. It's like, it can be a time where things are triggering or just overkill in terms of the amount of information or inquiries that you're getting. So I just think it's nice to share these things, that everybody, or a lot of people, go through this sort of kind of situation, but can make positive decisions to help them continue, and then alter things to make things a bit easier, but not shut off themselves altogether. Although some people do take that option if they consider that's the best one. What's other thoughts?
I was amazed he could take all the information coming in over the last couple of years. He's really put himself out there and made himself hyper available. I couldn't have dealt with it, but it was part of his process. I imagine now he's at the filter process.
I'm getting so many emails from David Gray Hammond that I was thinking of unsubscribing. So potentially what he's doing is he's just getting it out of balance. Removing one of the ways that people communicate, and one of the easiest ways people communicate, it seems wrong to me. Autistic people use DMs.
Sorry, Jules, are they actually personally from him, or are they automated kind of updates from things he's attached to? Because I get a lot of that, and I basically switch the notifications off.
No, I've signed up to his email list, there's 53 emails from him in about one a week. So actually that's not too onerous. But I think it was a period of time when I got about 4 in a week. And I didn't, because, you handle it, you look at it, you decide, you get rid of it. It just seems to me that if you are putting yourself out there, this is one of your jobs. I have a hell of a email situation for Autistic Radio, but I just see it as one of the jobs. It cuts both ways. I get what he's saying. He's made himself very popular, but it just seems that pulling out one of the ways that are most appropriate for autistic people, there must be a better way of dealing with it, using AI or something.
Although I've never had any overkill in terms of overloaded information or over inquiries to that scale, there has been times where it's like I've got myself that involved and I've put myself in a position where people have got an opportunity to ask questions and inquiries, and it seems to happen all at the one time, and it does kind of throw you off kilter a little bit, and you sort of kind of feel, well, should I kind of switch this off a bit so I can get some respite? But the way forward for me is the respite is just me walking away from it and then returning to it later. But people deal with things in different ways. But I know what you're saying as well. It's like there's all these different ways of communicating, and if you if you block one particular route off, it seems a bit harsh and unfair in that particular, people that would use that. I can see why it's done, but you can see it's harsh as well. The next post is from Autism Support Community, who is a blogger, late diagnosed autistic, ADHD, 2 sons, writer, blogger, public talks, autism, mental health, bullying. And what he's shared is he's talking about he's just done his first speaking event of the year. So I'll just continue. I have just done my first speaking event of the year and really enjoyed it. The venue was at the Open Forum, Stepping Stones, Bromley, and the audience a mixture of autistic and ADHD, some diagnosed, others not. I can say without a doubt that this was one of the best talks I've ever done. The talk was also the longest at nearly 3 hours long, but it felt just like 10 minutes. The best thing about the talk was not me. It was the audience who were engaged, asked so amazing questions and shared wisdom and life experience. I have found out that I am getting good at doing talks, which are proactive and allow questions and contributions throughout. They are great fun. This has been such a rewarding experience for me, and they want me to join their group every week. Seeing the audience so happy and grateful is so validating, and I can't wait for my next talk. It is so nice to get out there, meet people and learn from each other. It just brings all of my work together. Thank you to all at the Open Forum for inviting me. It was a pleasure and honour to meet you all today. Brian. 3 hours long? I'm impressed.
If it's interactive and others are contributing, yeah, you could half that for what he put in, maybe even a third. So it's maybe an hour long his actual talk, but interventions and discussions, yeah. Good energy there.
Yeah, aye, of course. But even then, it's still quite a significant amount of time. But it was good to stay. It's the positive language. It was like it wasn't a drag. It was an enjoyable experience, and felt worthwhile, very worthwhile, more than worthwhile doing. And that's the great thing about doing something like that, is feeling that you're making a difference to so many people, or even just one person, and it feels like all the efforts that you're went into, the preparation, being there, doing it, is worth it. And it's great that you can get the buzz back from the positive experience, because they won't all be positive experiences, but the ones that do come up, you savour them. Absolutely savour them. Not that I've ever done that kind of talk before, but I have done things similar. So can I get what you say? The next post is from Yale Clark, developmental psychologist. Education page, anxiety and OCD in children and parents, special focus on autistic and ADHDers, based in Australia. And what she shared is about the kind of autism, kind of rainbow symbol. Correct me if I'm wrong, once I've finished. And she's basically saying that symbol is not a marking tool. This symbol tells others that you're safe, and that you have done the intensive soul-searching work to begin to undo the ableism that permeates the health professions. It is not "I care about autism people" symbol. And it says, please people be aware that using the buzzword neurodiversity affirming and or using the affinity symbol, the one I was describing there, are not guarantees that the provider has done adequate training and reflection on depathologizing their approach to brain style differences. Even those of us who have been doing this work for years will always have more work to do. I have seen so many worrying examples of providers claiming to be neurodiverse affirming, wrong use of the term, and then signalling via pathologizing language on their website or resources, and that they've not done the work. Take care, it's a jungle out there. What's people's thoughts on this?
That seems like a really good thing to share, because I suppose these things can easily look like trademarks and we can put our trust in them, like branding and things, rather than seeing that, there's a self-declaration that isn't a guarantee.
Yeah, I've seen the symbol, but I've never actually thought about that symbol before. So basically, when they put that symbol there, it's like the fear is that's getting used as a guarantee to be very inclusive and very up to date and whatever. I'm just from my perspective, but a lot of it is just basically branding, and people just putting it as a brand just to sell something, to sell a service, to sell a project, to sell a post an advert. And it shouldn't be used like that, because life isn't that simple. I mean, Yale has talked about the neurodiversity language as well before. So it's all kind of linking in with the use of language, the use of pictures, the use of a lot of things regarding autism, and how it's used and how it's understood and how it's intended to be, targeted at certain people, and how it can be abused if not used properly, if we're not careful.
If we remember back a long way back, we can remember Morris objecting to have anything to do with the infinity symbol or rainbows, because he associated it with a radical movement. I have noticed it around a lot, and people do use it as a way of signalling that they are genuinely part of neurodiversity themselves. So it has been something that people have used as a method of identifying themselves within the autism group. And I think what Yale is objecting to is seeing that now it's being used as a kind of neurodiversity washing. So organisations that are not in any way neurodiversity affirming and are not in co-productions with the autistic people themselves and are not actually autistic, are using it as a way of washing them over to make themselves look as though they are something that they're not. So yeah, this idea that it's kind of a trademark but it's very unofficial is where it's at, yeah. And I think it's very nicely worded what Yale's put there. It's not snippy, it's very carefully thought out. So it manages to avoid any criticism of, oh, well, you would say that because you want to keep your part of the market to yourself. She's done it in a very considered way.
The final post of this evening is from Laura Helfeld, Neurodivergent Nurse Consulting. And it's about information that's available on a Substack about how to get them to eat, rethinking some traditional parenting strategies. And what she says is, food opportunities can often be a source of stress for families. Many parents and carers have shared with me that they feel they are constantly battling with their young person over food. As you can imagine, there are so many layers to this experience. To help figure out the why for the battles involve investigating many things. This includes questioning some of the most parenting strategies that have been role modelled to us to get the kid to do the thing. And the full blog is on the Substack, and a link is included in the comments. It was originally posted. So it's basically an information regarding, we've talked about this before, about food and the misunderstanding with autistic people with food and being fussy eaters, and it's been kind of put down as very minor and very trivial, even though it's much more serious than that, as we are aware, in terms of texture, taste, and how that can affect the senses and actually be very uncomfortable, triggering, and actually traumatic for many people. What's other people's thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking about what you said, and even like the importance of the environment in order to be able to eat. Like for myself, I'm sure other people have other experiences, similar, different, but like um, busy, noisy environments can make it much harder to cope with eating as well.
Yeah, I can recall that. There's one experience that I can relate to on that specifically, in terms of environment, is when I seem to talk about this a lot, but it's just brought so many experiences and stories to share. Is when I was working with Oxfam and the lunch break, and I didn't have the lunch in the shop. I left there, and it was the thing of where to go at a busy time of the day where it's going to be busy because everybody's going for lunch at the one time or just about that kind of time period. And I tried different places. I tried Greg's and I tried different cafes, and I ended up just getting into a Witherspoon's pub because it was bigger, quieter in a way in terms of space, and it was more comfortable. But it took a bit of time to actually test these out and then see what was comfortable for me, because I'm taking a lunch break from quite a kind of stressful kind of bit of work I was doing, and then I'm going to be doing in the afternoon. It's just try to find that place and that right table, right building, whatever. So I can totally relate to that just based on those experiences alone. Well, thanks everyone. That was a great discussion tonight. We went through quite a lot. Thanks for people that have shared those posts for us to share and discuss. It was very intense in places, very funny in others, but also inspiring, and it also generated many discussions and topics and feelings and emotions, as they always do. So thank you again. So this is Harry's Facebook for the 9th of February 2025, and we're here every Sunday from 5:55 PM UK time, and I look forward to next week, and we'll discuss much more of not the same topics but more Facebook posts. So thanks once again, thanks for listening, really enjoyed it tonight, and now I hand over to Jules.
Thank you, Harry. A hell of a lot to chew over in all of those posts. Thank you for putting all those together for us. And yeah, great discussions. This is the part of the show where we look at what we do here on Autistic Radio and the charity that we formed, Autistic Association, to support the work we do. And this week it is a mixed bag.